Okay, here we go. Now this is video 5. This is kind of fun. I thank you all for giving me this opportunity. I'm actually enjoying this. Um, so the video 5, what I want to look at is the language of the heart. Now, the narrative self, this self that identifies who we are as being this body in isolation from its environment, in isolation and especially separation from its environment, originates in the mind because the mind is all about words. That's both the gift and the curse of our particular place of development right now as a species, is that we have this narrative ability. We have the ability to tell stories. And of course, the stories that are most important to us are the ones that are directly related to this body living in this space, apart from and separated from the world around us. So we tell stories that relate directly to the time span between the birth of this body and its demise. That's what's most important to us. And of course, the stories that are we treasure the most are the ones that can somehow help us to navigate that space in between birth and death in relative comfort. We like that. We like comfort. But the curse of that is that the these stories always contain an element of danger, because as I said before, the world is out to get us. And so we have this hero myth that is sort of promoted in our culture. You know, so many movies that go something like this: the world is teetering on the brink of disaster, and only one man or woman, sometimes as a woman, uh, can save the world. Well, that's baloney. The world's going to be just fine without you or me. It's going to continue on in one way or another. What's going to change is our presence within that world at some point. At some point, our time in this body is going to come to an end. So when we are in the mind, we are wrapped up in that whole drama. And it's a drama that rotates around our language and our ability to tell stories. But when we move into the heart really isn't concerned about that whole drama that happens with the narrative self. You know, the narrative self is trapped in this stream of consciousness that is always commenting on the world one way or the other, and our performance within that world. But when we move into the heart, then we start to move into a different awareness that has much more to do with stillness and much less to do with language. But the heart still has its own language, and I think that's what I want to talk about right now. And the heart, because lives in a different world, it is not tied up in this drama of the self being separate from the world. But the heart, as I keep saying, is about relationships. So the heart wants to reach out and to make these connections, and that's its forte. But the language that it uses to do that takes many different forms from the spoken word or the written word. One of those forms is dreaming. Dreaming operates in a very different level. It doesn't really move in that same space at all. It has a life of its own, and yet when we enter into relationship, then that life becomes our life, so that we make a connection there. So dreaming is part of the language of the heart. But there are other languages of the heart too. There are gut feelings. There's inspiration that comes to us. There's creativity. There can be premonitions. There can be synchronicities. Art is a tremendous language of art and music. Both are tremendous aspects of the language of the heart. You know, remember Jackie and I had the opportunity to go to Paris, and there at the Musée d'Orsay, they have all these artworks of Impressionist paintings, and uh, I remember standing in front of a Van Gogh painting. Now, mind you, I'd seen Van Gogh paintings in books before, and I just didn't get it. I didn't understand it at all. But I remember standing in front of this self-portrait of Van Gogh, and it was dancing. It was alive. It was communicating straight to my heart so powerfully that I broke down in tears. I mean, just a flood of tears. I was overwhelmed by this experience of standing in front of this. It was like he was telling his whole story through this painting in such a moving way. That's the power of art. Music is the same thing. You know, a great part of movie making is actually the music that goes behind it. And I was watching a documentary on this about those people who write music for movies. One person was saying, you know, we can make you feel whatever we want you to feel, because they know that this language of the heart so intimately that they know how to use it to express things that are beyond the confines of language. So when you're entering into this place of the heart, know that you are beginning to access a different kind of language. Now, one of the things that we did in our second workshop was Ann Kemp shared with us and gave to us her photography. She had little photos that she laid out on the floor, and we asked each person to pick one of those photos that was that touched them in some way. This was not something that you were going to create a narrative around or have a reason for. None of that. It was just the heart selecting what was most important. And then Anne, in her generosity, gave that photo to each person there. For those of you who missed, we'll be going to do that again in our upcoming session, so that you too can have your own photo. But the important thing is here is to engage the photo through the heart, to allow it to begin to touch us and speak to us in a different way. If you want to get started on this, before then, I would suggest that you go to the website AnnKempPhotography.com, and there you can see just the magnificent, beautiful work that Anne does through photography. And hopefully, if you're like me, you'll find that there'll be at least one. For me, there's many photos from her website that touch me very, very deeply. And to practice this language of the heart, so that you can get a better sense of the broadness and the wonder of being able to communicate beyond what I call the limits of language, because the language that we use is actually very limited. And we have modes of communication that range far beyond that. So when we are accessing the heart, we're moving beyond those limits to begin to engage our larger self and our larger ability to perceive. So I think that's it for now. I think that's video 5, and we're going to call that maybe the language of the heart. I'll see you in the next video.